An old man left his Mafia mansion to a veteran and his dog. Then God did the rest. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into today's incredible journey. On a cold, foggy night in a small, forgotten town, a homeless veteran and his loyal dog trudged through the muddy streets. Their journey was far from over, but their destination felt distant, a land unknown to both man and beast. Tom, a man worn by years of war, wandered with nothing but his memories and his dog Scout, a German shepherd who had stood by his side through thick and thin. His face, scarred by the hardships of both battle and life, showed signs of a man who had seen too much, yet felt too little. There was no home to return to, no family waiting for him, just endless miles ahead. The rain poured heavily, the storm roaring as if it too wanted to wash away the past. The two trudged forward, not seeking comfort, but merely a place to rest, to survive. They had no place to stay, no one to turn to. The empty street seemed endless, filled with the echoes of their footsteps as they passed abandoned houses and broken streetlights. Yet, in the midst of this gloom, there was a flicker of light. A faint glow shone from behind a weathered building, illuminating the dark alley with a promise of warmth. Scout's ears perked up, his nose twitching, sensing something, perhaps something more than the rain or the wind. His growls broke the silence, sharp and urgent. Tom, always trusting Scout's instincts, paused. He looked up at the flickering light, unsure but drawn to it. It was then he heard it, a faint cry for help, barely audible over the howling wind. Someone was in distress. Without thinking, Tom dashed towards the sound, with Scout following closely behind. They reached the old, crumbling building at the edge of town, and as they rounded the corner, Tom's eyes fell on the source of the cry. An elderly man, his frail form shivering, was trapped beneath a fallen beam, struggling to free himself. The man's face was pale, his eyes wide with panic. Without hesitation, Tom rushed to the man's side, his military training kicking in as he assessed the situation. He was no stranger to dangerous situations, but this was different. This man, trapped by fate, was in desperate need of help. Tom's strong hands gripped the beam, and with a grunt, he pushed it off the elderly man, who gasped in relief. "You're safe now," Tom said, his voice steady yet filled with compassion. The old man, breathing heavily, looked up at Tom with gratitude in his eyes. Thank you so much," he whispered, still in shock from the ordeal. Tom helped him to his feet, guiding him into the safety of the building's warmth. As they stepped inside, Tom took a moment to survey the space. It was an old house, worn down by time, but still standing strong, much like the man he had just saved. The elderly man, who introduced himself as Victor, gestured for Tom and Scout to sit. The small room smelled of old wood and dust, a place long forgotten by the world outside. "You've done more for me than anyone ever has," Victor said, his voice shaking. He looked at Tom, studying him with an intensity that felt almost like recognition. Tom merely nodded, unsure of what else to say. It was then that Victor spoke again, his voice filled with emotion. "You don't know it yet, but you've changed everything. You and your dog. You've given me hope, something I haven't felt in years. And for that, I will never forget you." I watched as Victor, the elderly man I had just saved, sat down at the small wooden table in the corner of his house, his trembling hands wrapped around a steaming cup of tea. He looked at me, his eyes filled with gratitude and something more, something deeper. It was as if he had just realized that life had handed him another chance, and he was unsure how to make the most of it. I had only come to this town looking for shelter from the storm, but now, after saving this man, I felt a strange sense of purpose stirring inside me. My dog, Scout, loyal as ever, sat by my side, his head resting on his paws, content but alert. He, too, seemed to sense that something important had just begun. "You don't know it yet," Victor said, breaking the silence, his voice soft but steady. "But you've done more for me than you could ever imagine. You've given me a reason to believe again. A reason to live, perhaps. I nodded, unsure of how to respond. I had no family left, no one to turn to, and I had long ago learned that survival was the only thing that mattered. But hearing Victor's words stirred something inside me, something I had long buried. The storm outside raged on, but inside the house, there was a warmth that seemed to wrap around us, a strange kind of peace that felt like it had been waiting for years. The fire crackled in the hearth, its soft glow lighting up the room and casting long shadows on the walls. I've lived alone for many years, Victor continued, his voice low, as though the words were heavy with years of silence. I've seen many things in my time, things I regret. But what I regret most is not being able to make amends for the mistakes I've made. You see, I wasn't always this old man hiding in a forgotten house. I was once someone who ruled this town. I had power, wealth, and respect. His voice faltered, and I could see the pain in his eyes as he relived those days. I could only imagine the kind of life he had lived, the things he had done. But with power came greed. He continued, his eyes distant. And with greed came betrayal. I lost everything. My family, my friends, my honor. All of it was gone in the blink of an eye. Now, I live in this house, surrounded by memories of a life I can never get back. He paused, taking a deep breath. But when you came in, when you saved me, something shifted. I realized that maybe, just maybe, I could do something good before it's too late. I sat there quietly, listening to him. He seemed like a man who had been carrying the weight of his past for far too long. I could relate to that feeling. I, too, had my own burdens, things I had seen, things I had done. But I was still here, still fighting, still surviving. I want to give you something, Victor said suddenly, his voice filled with resolve. I want to give you my mansion. The words hung in the air like a heavy cloud. I wasn't sure I had heard him correctly. His mansion? A Mafia mansion? It didn't make sense. I thought I had misheard him. What? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Victor looked at me, his eyes now filled with something that could only be described as sincerity. Yes, you saved my life. And for that, I want to give you everything I have left. My mansion, my wealth, everything. It's yours. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a set of keys, placing them into my hand. I felt a chill run down my spine as I stared at the keys in my palm. I had never imagined I would be in this position, standing in front of a man who had once been a powerful figure, and now, he was offering me his entire life's work. I didn't know what to say. But why me? I asked, still in disbelief. Why not someone else? Someone who deserves it more. Victor smiled faintly, as if he had expected this question. Because you're different. You've shown kindness when you didn't have to. You've given me hope when I thought it was lost forever. You and your dog, you're not like the others. You're the ones who saved me, and now, it's time for me to give you a chance. I looked at the keys again, feeling the weight of them in my hand. It was a lot to take in, a lot to process. But as I stood there, I realized something. This was more than just a house, more than just wealth or material things. This was a chance for redemption, a chance to change my life. And maybe, just maybe, it was a chance for Victor to find the peace he had been seeking for so long. The storm outside had subsided, and the world seemed to breathe a little easier. As I looked at Scout, I knew that this was only the beginning. The keys in my hand were a symbol of something greater, a new start, a second chance. It was time to see what this mansion held, and what the future had in store. For me and my loyal dog. I stood there, the mansion's keys heavy in my hand, my mind racing with disbelief. The home I had entered was no longer just a forgotten, crumbling shell of Victor's past. It was now my new reality, a mansion filled with secrets and memories, a place that held the echoes of a life once filled with power and, perhaps, regret. Scout, my ever-loyal German shepherd, sat at my side, his amber eyes scanning the surroundings, his keen senses already picking up the strange energy that lingered in the air. The mansion had been quiet for years, but it felt different now. It was as if the very walls were waiting for something, or someone, to bring it back to life. I could feel it, an unspoken promise, a chance for redemption, not just for me, but for Victor too. He had given me more than just a home. He had handed me a key to the past, and a chance to make something of it. The floor creaked under my boots as I walked through the grand hall, its old wooden panels darkened by time, but still beautiful in their own way. The faint scent of dust and forgotten memories lingered in the air, But something else was here too. Something almost alive. The flicker of the fireplace in the corner cast long shadows on the walls, creating a cozy, yet eerie atmosphere. It was then that I heard it, a soft sound, almost like a whisper, coming from the far corner of the room. Scout's ears perked up immediately, his head turning toward the source of the noise. I followed his gaze, unsure of what to expect. There, hidden behind an old bookshelf, was a small door, barely noticeable at first, but unmistakable once I saw it. My curiosity piqued. I walked over, my hand instinctively reaching for the handle. It was cold to the touch, as though the door had been untouched for decades. I turned the handle, the door creaking open with a low groan. Beyond it was a narrow staircase that spiraled downward into darkness. I hesitated for a moment, then looked down at Scout, who was already standing by my side, his tail wagging slightly. He trusted me, and in turn, I trusted him. We were in this together. As I descended the stairs, I felt the temperature drop, the air growing thick, with the scent of old wood and something more, something hidden. My flashlight flickered to life, casting a dim light on the stone walls, revealing a secret room buried beneath the mansion. The walls were lined with old shelves, filled with dust-covered books, old papers, and strange artifacts. At the far end of the room was a wooden chest, its surface scratched and worn, as though it had been moved countless times. My heart raced as I approached it, the anticipation building with each step. I knelt before the chest, brushing away the dust that had accumulated over the years. Slowly, I opened it. Inside, there were old letters, faded photographs, and a small, rusted box. I picked up the box, my hands trembling as I unlocked it. What I found inside was nothing short of extraordinary. A collection of documents, maps, and a journal, all detailing Victor's life before the Mafia. The journal's pages were filled with stories of betrayal, love, and loss, stories that Victor had never shared with anyone. It was clear that this house, this mansion, was more than just a symbol of power. It was a testament to the life Victor had lived, a life filled with both darkness and light. I closed the journal, feeling the weight of Victor's past pressing down on me. I had come here looking for shelter, but now, it seemed I had stumbled upon something much larger, a story that had been waiting to be told, a story that might change everything. As I stood there, the mansion around me seemed to come alive, as though it was reacting to the discovery. I could hear the wind whistling through the cracks in the walls, the whispers of the past beckoning me forward. Scout barked softly, breaking the silence, and I knew it was time to leave this room for now. But I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning, that the mansion held more secrets, secrets that could unlock not only Victor's past, but my future as well. I took the journal and the rusted box back upstairs with me, my heart still racing with excitement and fear. What had I just uncovered? And what was it about this place that made me feel like I was being drawn into something greater than myself? The storm outside had subsided, and the world seemed quieter now, as if holding its breath, waiting for me to make the next move. I walked back into the main hall of the mansion, looking around at the grand staircase, the ornate chandeliers, and the faded portraits of long-gone ancestors. I felt as if I was standing at the crossroads of two worlds, the one I had left behind, and the one I was about to enter. This mansion, once a symbol of power and fear, was now mine to claim. But with it came responsibility. Responsibility to understand Victor's past, to uncover the truth, and to decide what I would do with the life that had been handed to me. The mansion had already changed me, and I knew that what I would do next would change everything. I stood there in the grand hallway of the mansion, holding the journal and the rusted box I had discovered. The weight of it all felt heavy in my hands, but my mind was racing, trying to make sense of what I had just uncovered. The old house, now mine, seemed to be watching me. I could feel its presence, the energy of the past lingering in the walls, almost as if it was urging me to unlock its final secrets. Scout, as always, stayed by my side, his amber eyes flicking from one shadow to the next, ever watchful. We had both been through a lot together, and I could sense he, too, felt the shift in the air. The mansion, once the epitome of Victor's power and wealth, now felt like something different. It was a place of mystery, of unanswered questions, and as much as I wanted to put the pieces together, there was an undeniable pull to wait. Wait for something. But what? I walked slowly toward the study, my footsteps echoing off the marble floors. The fire in the hearth crackled softly, casting a warm glow over the old leather chairs and shelves filled with books. It all felt like a different world, a world that was now mine to navigate. As I entered the study, I felt the air shift. It was as if the house had been waiting for me to step into this room, to open the door to the unknown. The walls were lined with old books, and in the far corner stood a large desk, covered in papers. I walked over, my heart pounding with anticipation. On the desk was an old map, yellowed with age. It was a map of the town, but there were markings on it that I had never seen before, places circled in red ink, notes written in the margins. It was as if Victor had been preparing for something important, and now I had stumbled upon it. I picked up the map, carefully unfolding it, and as I did, I noticed a small, folded letter underneath. My fingers trembled slightly as I opened it. The letter was written in Victor's handwriting, the ink faded but still legible. To the one who inherits my legacy, it began. You may not understand yet, but you are the key to something far greater than this mansion. I have left you more than just material wealth. What lies beneath this house is a secret, a power that has been waiting for the right person to uncover it. It is your choice whether you choose to unlock it or let it remain buried forever. But know this, your decision will shape not only your future, but the future of this town. Trust the journey. Trust the path that has led you here, and most importantly, trust yourself. You are not alone. The letter was signed simply, Victor. I sat down at the desk, the weight of his words sinking in. The mansion, the wealth, the mysterious map, it was all part of something bigger, something I couldn't yet grasp. But I felt a deep, unshakable sense of purpose. Victor had left me more than just the mansion. He had left me with a choice that would change everything. I stood up, folding the letter carefully, and placed it in my pocket. The fire in the hearth crackled again, a reminder that time was passing, that the mansion had been waiting for me to take the next step. I glanced at Scout, who was sitting by the door, his eyes following me with quiet understanding. We had come a long way, and now we were on the edge of something much larger than either of us. There was something buried beneath this house, something Victor had left for me to find. The question was, what was it? And was I ready to uncover it? As I walked out of the study, I could feel the mansion shift around me, as if it was waking from a long slumber. The floorboards creaked under my weight. The walls seemed to hum with life, and the air was thick with secrets. This was no longer just a place to live. It was a journey, and I was about to take the first step into a world I hadn't yet begun to understand. I wasn't sure what the future held, but I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't turn back now. The mansion, with all its mysteries and promises, had become my destiny, and the journey ahead would change everything. I stood in front of the mansion, the heavy weight of the key in my hand, a symbol of everything I had inherited, everything that had led me here. The house, with all its secrets, had now become a part of my destiny. I had no idea what I was walking into, but something deep inside told me that I couldn't turn back. The mansion had already changed me, and there was no escaping the path that was unfolding before me. As I made my way through the halls, the familiar creak of the wooden floors echoed in the silence. The mansion felt alive, as though it was waking from a long slumber, its walls whispering stories of the past, secrets that had been buried for decades. But it wasn't just the house that was changing, it was me too. The fire in the hearth crackled softly, and I could feel the warmth of the flames as they flickered in the dimly lit room. I paused for a moment, letting the heat wash over me, the comfort of the fire contrasting with the chill that lingered in my bones. The air was thick with the scent of old wood, dust, and something else I couldn't quite place. Something mysterious, something that called to me. Scout padded silently beside me, his sharp senses always alert, his presence a constant reminder that I wasn't alone in this journey. His amber eyes scanned every corner, every shadow, as though he could sense the weight of the mansion's secrets just as I could. I knew that whatever lay ahead, I could count on him. The further I ventured into the mansion, the more I felt like I was stepping into another world, a world where the past and present collided, a world that had been waiting for someone like me to come along. The walls, though worn and weathered, held stories of power, betrayal, and a life lived in the shadows. But what did it all mean? What had Victor left behind? and why had he entrusted me with this legacy? The more I thought about it, the more questions filled my mind, but there were no easy answers. It was as if the mansion itself held the key to everything, yet I had no idea how to unlock it. I reached the grand staircase, its marble steps smooth and cold beneath my boots. I could feel the weight of history pressing down on me, and for a moment, I hesitated. The house had been silent for so long, but now it was as if the walls were alive, urging me to keep moving forward. Scout's ears perked up as we reached the top of the stairs, his body tense. Something was different now. Something had changed. As I entered the room at the top of the stairs, I felt a shiver run down my spine. The air in here was colder, heavier. I could see the faint outline of an old door at the far end of the room. Its wood darkened with age. I walked toward it, my heart racing, and as I reached for the handle, I heard it, soft whispers, barely audible, coming from the other side of the door. It was as though the house itself was speaking to me, guiding me, beckoning me to discover whatever lay beyond. I turned the handle, the door creaking open with a loud groan. Inside was a small, dimly lit room, its walls lined with shelves filled with old books, dusty scrolls, and strange artifacts. At the center of the room stood a large, ornate chest, its wood dark and aged, but its carvings still intricate and beautiful. My eyes locked onto the chest, and I felt an undeniable pull toward it. The room seemed to grow quieter, as if holding its breath. I stepped inside, the wooden floor creaking beneath my feet. Scout remained at the door, his eyes watching me carefully. I approached the chest slowly, my heart pounding in my chest. I had no idea what I would find inside, but I knew one thing for sure. This was it. This was the moment. I knelt down, placing my hands on the chest's surface, feeling the cold wood beneath my fingers. The latch was old, rusted, but still functional. With a soft click, the chest opened. What I found inside was beyond anything I could have imagined. There, nestled in the velvet lining, was an old map, much like the one I had found in the study, but this one was different. It was more detailed, more precise, and it had markings on it that I had never seen before. It wasn't just a map of the town, it was a map of the mansion itself, and beneath it, buried in the earth, was a hidden treasure. The map seemed to pulse with life, the ink shifting and changing before my eyes. I felt as though the walls of the mansion were closing in on me, as if the house was aware of the discovery I had just made. But before I could fully process what I had found, I heard a soft noise behind me. I turned quickly, but there was nothing there, only the faint sound of footsteps echoing through the house. I wasn't alone anymore. The whispers in the walls grew louder, more urgent. Something was happening, and I wasn't sure if I was ready for it. But there was no turning back now. The mansion had revealed its secret to me, and I had a choice to make. What would I do with this newfound knowledge? The weight of the map in my hands felt heavier now, its significance becoming clearer with every passing second. The mansion had given me a key to something much larger than I had ever imagined. But with it came a responsibility. The responsibility to uncover the truth, to face whatever lay hidden in the depths of this place. As I stood there, holding the map in my hands, I knew that this was only the beginning. Whatever came next would change everything. I stood there in the quiet of the mansion, holding the map in my hands, the weight of its significance sinking in. The walls of this old place seemed to be watching me, their silence pressing down, urging me to move, to act. The map had shown me something I had never expected, a hidden vault beneath the mansion, filled with treasures that no one had seen for decades, maybe even centuries. My heart raced as I traced the lines on the paper, feeling the pull of what was buried below. But there was something else too. Something darker, something I couldn't quite understand. The mansion had a life of its own, and it had chosen me to uncover its secrets. It felt as though the house itself was alive, with its own voice, its own desires. But what did it want from me? I glanced at Scout, who was standing by the door, his ears alert, his amber eyes scanning the room. He had always been there for me, through everything, and now I felt his presence even more strongly. We had both been through a lot, but this was different. We were standing at the edge of something huge, something that would change everything. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. The map had shown the way, but it was up to me to take the next step. I folded the map carefully and tucked it into my pocket, then made my way toward the stairs. The The mansion's grand staircase stretched before me, its marble steps gleaming in the dim light. I could hear the creak of the floorboards beneath my feet as I climbed, the sound echoing in the stillness. The mansion felt more alive with each step, the air thick with anticipation. When I reached the top, I turned down the long hallway, my footsteps muffled on the thick carpet. There was a door at the end, an old wooden door, its edges worn and chipped from years of neglect. This was it, the room where the vault was hidden. I reached for the door handle, my hand trembling slightly. For a moment, I hesitated. What was I about to uncover? What if I wasn't ready for what lay behind that door? But before I could second-guess myself, Scout let out a low growl, his body tense. I turned to look at him, and his eyes met mine, full of understanding. He was ready, just like me. I pushed the door open. Inside was a small, dimly lit room, its walls lined with shelves filled with old books, strange artifacts, and faded photographs. At the center of the room was a large, ornate chest, its surface covered in dust but still beautifully carved. My heart pounded in my chest as I approached it, my mind racing with the possibilities of what it might hold. I knelt down and placed my hands on the chest's surface. The wood was cold to the touch, but it felt solid, real, as though it had been waiting for me to open it. I took a deep breath, then pulled open the lid. Inside, there were stacks of old papers, more maps, and a collection of journals, each one filled with handwritten notes. I picked up one of the journals, its leather cover cracked and worn. It was Victor's handwriting. As I flipped through the pages, I could see that it wasn't just a record of his life. It was a blueprint of everything that had happened in this mansion, in this town. There were mentions of secret dealings, hidden rooms, and people who had come and gone, leaving behind only whispers. But what struck me the most was a page near the end, a note scrawled hastily in the margin. The treasure is not gold or silver. It is knowledge. The truth must remain buried. I stared at the words, my mind racing. What was Victor trying to tell me? Why had he left all of this for me to find? I turned the page, my hands shaking. The next entry was different from the rest. It was dated years after Victor had left the Mafia, after he had changed his life. I fear that the past is catching up with me. The entry read, "The mansion is no longer safe. The secret beneath it is too powerful to remain hidden. I must protect it, even if it means my own life." I stopped reading, the weight of his words pressing down on me. The treasure wasn't material. It was the secret, the knowledge that Victor had kept hidden all these years. But what was the secret, and why did it matter so much? The room felt colder now, the air thick with the weight of the past. I had uncovered something that had been buried for decades, but I was no closer to understanding its true significance. As I sat there, the flickering light of the candles casting shadows on the walls, I realized that this was just the beginning. The mansion had shown me the path, but it was up to me to walk it. And with each step, I knew I was getting closer to the truth, a truth that would change everything. I stood up, placing the journal back in the chest, and closing the lid. Scout followed me, his paws silent on the floor. As we left the room, the mansion had already begun to reveal its secrets to me, but I knew that there was more to uncover, more to learn. The journey was far from over, and I could feel the pull of the unknown drawing me forward. Whatever lay ahead, I knew one thing. I couldn't turn back now. I stood in the dimly lit hallway of the mansion, the weight of what I had uncovered pressing heavily on my chest. The journals, the maps, the cryptic notes, they all pointed to something far greater than just treasure or hidden riches. Victor had left me with a legacy, a secret that spanned decades, one that was tied not just to the mansion but to the very fabric of the town. I could feel the pull of it deep within me, like a whisper from the past that refused to be ignored. I could feel the mansion watching me, waiting for me to make the next move. As I walked through the halls, the air seemed to grow heavier, as if the mansion itself was alive, urging me onward. My heart raced with anticipation and fear, not knowing what I would find but knowing that I had no choice but to follow the path laid before me. The mansion was not just a place, it was a story, and I was the one meant to finish it. Scout padded quietly at my side, his body tense, his nose twitching as if sensing the same tension in the air. He had always been my companion, my constant, but now I felt that even he was on edge. The mansion felt different now, more alive, more present. I reached the library at the end of the hall, a room filled with towering shelves of books, ancient tomes, and scrolls that looked like they hadn't been touched in years. I stepped inside, the floor creaking beneath my feet, and glanced around at the dusty shelves. This room, more than any other, felt like the heart of the mansion, a place where the secrets were kept, where the past lingered in the shadows. At the far end of the room, there was a large desk, covered with papers and books that looked like they had been recently disturbed. My eyes immediately fell on a large leather-bound book, its cover worn and faded. I walked over, my hands trembling as I opened it. The pages were yellowed with age, the ink smudged in places, but the handwriting was still legible. The book was Victor's journal, a deeper record of his life than the one I had found earlier. This one was filled with more than just his thoughts. It was a ledger, a map of the connections he had made, the deals he had struck, the people who had come in and out of his life. As I flipped through the pages, I found names I didn't recognize, addresses, and dates that seemed to form a pattern. There were markings on the pages, notes that seemed to indicate something hidden, something important. I turned the page and froze. There, in the middle of the page, was a drawing, a map of the town, but not just any map. This one was different. It showed the same landmarks, the same streets, but there were markings, red XS and circles drawn over specific locations. And beneath it, written in Victor's hand, were the words, "The truth lies beneath the town. Find the chamber, and you will understand." My pulse quickened as I traced the lines of the map with my finger. The chamber? What chamber? I had seen the mansion's hidden secrets, but now I realized that it wasn't just the house that held the answers. The town itself was part of the mystery, a key to unlocking whatever secret Victor had kept hidden all these years. I could feel the weight of the journal in my hands, the responsibility of what it meant. This was no longer just about the mansion. It was about something larger, something that could change everything. I closed the journal, my mind spinning with possibilities. I had to know more, had to uncover the truth behind Victor's cryptic message. But the question was, where did I begin? I looked around the room, my gaze falling on the shelves once more. There had to be more. More clues. More answers. And then, as if the house itself had read my thoughts, I noticed something strange. A book, slightly out of place on the shelf, with its spine cracked as though it had been opened many times. I reached for it, pulling it from the shelf, and as I did, a small piece of paper fell out from between the pages. I unfolded it carefully, the paper yellowed and brittle. It was a letter, written in the same hurried handwriting as the journal entries. "You are close, but be careful," the letter read. "There are others who seek the same truth. The chamber is not just a place, it is a doorway, but only the worthy will pass." The word sent a chill through me. Others? Who else knew about the chamber, about what was hidden beneath the town? I felt my heart race, but I knew I had no choice but to press forward. The mansion, the town, Victor's legacy, it was all leading me towards something I wasn't sure I was ready for. But there was no turning back now. I had to find the chamber, whatever it was, and uncover the truth. And with that thought, I turned to Scout, who was already standing by the door, his eyes locked on me as if waiting for the next move. We were in this together, and whatever lay ahead, I knew we would face it head on. With a deep breath, I set out from the library, the weight of the unknown pressing down on me, knowing that the journey I was about to take would change everything. And as I stepped into the hallway, the mansion seemed to whisper in response, urging me forward into the dark unknown. I walked through the mansion, the heavy atmosphere pressing in on me with every step. Scout stayed close, his presence a comfort in the otherwise eerie silence of the house. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone, was watching me, waiting for me to make the next move. The house was no longer just a home. It had become a puzzle, a maze of hidden rooms and secrets, and I was the key that would unlock them all. The maps and journals I had found were just pieces of the puzzle. I could feel it in my bones. The answers were out there, somewhere in the mansion, somewhere beneath it. The cryptic letters, the maps, the strange drawings, it all pointed to one thing. The chamber. The chamber that was hidden beneath the town. But what did it hold? What was it about this place that made Victor so desperate to protect it? And why had he chosen me to uncover its secrets? I needed to find out. My heart was racing now. Every corner I turned, every room I entered, felt like it held a clue, a piece of the mystery that I needed to solve. I walked into the large drawing room, where the grand fireplace still held remnants of the fire from earlier. The room was dimly lit, the faded curtains swaying slightly with the draft, and the old furniture seemed to hold the weight of 1,000 untold stories. I noticed a painting hanging on the far wall, its gold frame tarnished with age. The painting was of the mansion itself, but it looked different, newer, as if it had been painted long before the house had fallen into disrepair. There was a figure in the painting, standing in front of the mansion, dressed in old-fashioned clothing. The face of the figure was obscured by shadow, but something about it struck me as familiar. As I studied the painting, I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. It was as if the figure was looking directly at me, its eyes filled with warning, as if it was trying to tell me something. I stepped closer, reaching out to touch the frame, when I noticed something strange. Behind the painting, there was a slight indentation in the wall. I ran my fingers along the edges, feeling for a mechanism, and soon enough, I found it. A small button hidden in the wall, nearly invisible against the faded wallpaper. I pressed it, and the wall groaned softly as a hidden compartment slid open, revealing a small, rusted metal box. My pulse quickened as I reached for it, the box cold and heavy in my hands. Inside, there was another letter, written in the same hurried script as the previous ones. I opened it carefully, reading the words aloud in the quiet room. The truth lies not in what you find, but in what you are willing to uncover. The chamber is a doorway to the past, but be warned, the past is never truly gone. It waits, it watches, and it will not let go. I felt a chill run down my spine as I read those words. The past. It wasn't just history. It was alive, watching me, waiting. What had Victor meant by this? Was the chamber truly a doorway to something more than just the mansion's secrets? I tucked the letter into my pocket and turned to leave the room, but as I did, I heard a sound, faint, but distinct. A door creaking open somewhere in the mansion. I froze, my heart racing. Was it just the house settling, or had I missed something? Something, or someone was here. I quickly made my way down the hall, my footsteps echoing in the silence, Scout at my side, alert. The sound came again, louder this time, a door scraping against the floor. I followed the noise, my pulse pounding in my ears. As I reached the end of the hallway, I saw it. The door, cracked open just enough for me to see into the room beyond. I approached cautiously, my hand on the door handle, ready to push it open. But before I could, I heard a voice, low and hoarse, coming from the other side. "You're not ready," it said, the words barely audible but unmistakable. I froze, my hand trembling on the door. The voice sounded familiar, but I couldn't place it. Was it Victor? Or someone else? Someone who knew more about the mansion, more about what lay beneath it? Without thinking, I pushed the door open. The room inside was dark, its corners shrouded in shadow. The air was thick with dust, and the only light came from the dim glow of the fireplace across the room. As my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I saw a figure standing in front of the fire. It was an older man, his face shadowed by the light, but I knew immediately who it was. Victor. But something was wrong. He looked different, haggard, older, his eyes sunken as if the weight of time had finally caught up with him. "Victor," I called out, my voice trembling. He turned slowly, his gaze locking with mine. "You've come," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "But you still don't understand. The chamber, it's not just a door. It's a choice." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. What did he mean? The chamber was a choice? I took a step forward, but he held up a hand. "You have to decide now. What you find down there will change everything. But once you open that door, there is no going back." I stood there, staring at him, my mind racing. I had come this far, uncovered so many secrets, but now the truth was within my reach. And yet, I was afraid. Afraid of what I might find. But Victor was right. There was no turning back. It was time to face whatever lay beneath the mansion and whatever it would mean for my future. I stood frozen in the doorway, staring at Victor's worn, hollow face. His words echoed in my mind. The chamber, it's not just a door. It's a choice. I could feel the weight of those words pressing down on me. The mansion had always been full of mysteries, but now the most important one was before me, and I had to make a decision that would shape not just my future, but the future of this town, this mansion, and everything it held. Victor's eyes, once filled with power, now carried something darker, a weariness that only time and regret could bring. "You've come so far," he whispered, his voice raspy. "But now you must choose. What lies beneath? It's not just the past. It's the future. Yours. The town's." I could see his hands shaking slightly, and it made me question everything I thought I knew. This wasn't about wealth, or hidden treasures, or even the mansion. It was about power, something far greater than I had anticipated. What was this chamber? What was its purpose? And why had Victor hidden it for so long? I took a step forward, the floorboards creaking beneath my boots. Scout, standing silently beside me, let out a low growl, his body tense, sensing the shift in the room's energy. I could feel it too. The air was thick with uncertainty, with something unknown lurking in the shadows. "You have to decide now," Victor continued, his eyes pleading with me in a way that made my heart race. "There is no going back once you open that door. What you find will change everything. But you must be prepared, because the truth you're about to uncover might destroy everything you thought you knew." I could feel the weight of his words like a boulder pressing down on my chest. My mind was racing, trying to piece together the puzzle. This wasn't just about uncovering secrets. It was about confronting something that had been buried for a reason, something that could alter the course of history. "What's behind that door?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Victor hesitated, his face shadowed with a mixture of regret and fear. "The chamber. It holds the key to everything. But it's not a gift, it's a burden. The truth is dangerous. You don't know what it will awaken, what it will unleash." I stood there, my heart pounding in my chest. My mind kept running in circles, torn between the desire to know the truth and the fear of what that truth might cost. This mansion, this town, had all been shrouded in mystery, and now I was standing on the edge of uncovering something much bigger than I could have ever imagined. The door at the end of the hallway was the threshold to a new reality, a new world that I had to decide whether I was ready to face. My fingers brushed the edge of the doorframe as I stepped forward. The creaking of the door seemed to echo in the silence, as though the mansion itself was holding its breath. Victor's warning still hung in the air, but I knew there was no turning back now. I had come too far, uncovered too many secrets. Whatever lay ahead, I had to see it through. As I reached for the door handle, I glanced at Victor one last time. "I don't know what's behind that door," I said, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside me. "But I have to find out." Victor nodded, his eyes filled with a strange mixture of sadness and relief. "Then go. But remember, the chamber is more than just a door. It's a choice. Choose wisely, because it will determine everything." I nodded, my heart racing as I turned the handle and pushed the door open. The moment it creaked open, the air seemed to shift, colder, heavier. My breath came out in soft clouds as I stepped into the room. The chamber was unlike anything I had expected. It wasn't just a room. It was a vault, a hidden sanctuary. The walls were lined with ancient stone, and the ceiling stretched high above, the space far larger than the rest of the house. In the center of the room stood a pedestal, and on it rested a large, intricate stone chest. It was covered in dust, its surface engraved with symbols I didn't recognize. The symbols seemed to pulse with an energy I couldn't explain, as though the chest was alive, waiting to be opened. I walked slowly toward it, my feet echoing in the vast silence of the room. My hand trembled as I reached out to touch the stone, feeling the cool surface beneath my fingertips. The chest felt ancient, far older than the mansion itself. I could feel its power, its weight, and I knew, without a doubt, that this was what Victor had been protecting. I lifted the lid of the chest, and as I did, the air around me seemed to hum, charged with electricity. Inside the chest was a collection of scrolls, books, and what appeared to be artifacts, each one carefully placed, as though someone had arranged them with great care. But it wasn't just the objects that caught my attention. It was the faint glow emanating from beneath them. I reached for the source of the glow, pulling back a scroll that had been hidden beneath the others. When I unrolled it, I found it covered in symbols, much like those on the chest. But this was no ordinary scroll. It was a map. No, not a map, a blueprint. One that traced the history of the town, the mansion, and the family that had lived here for generations. The truth was within my grasp. And just as I began to realize the depth of what I was about to uncover, a voice broke the silence. "You found it," Victor said, his voice echoing in the chamber. "But the question remains, what will you do with it?" I stood there in the chamber, the ancient scroll in my hands, its symbols glowing faintly in the dim light. Victor's voice echoed in the silence, asking the one question that weighed heavily on my mind. What would I do with what I had uncovered? The answer seemed so simple at first: to uncover the truth, to finally reveal the secrets of the mansion, of the town. But as I looked around the room, at the artifacts, the books, the ancient map, I realized the truth was more than just knowledge. It was a responsibility. I had come this far, and now I was standing on the edge of something much bigger than I had ever imagined. The mansion, with all its mysteries, had brought me to this point, and I was about to make a choice that would determine everything. I felt the weight of the chamber's power, the energy that seemed to pulse through the walls, calling to me. But what was I supposed to do with it? Was I meant to take the knowledge and use it for myself? Or was I supposed to protect it, to keep the secrets buried just as Victor had? I took a deep breath, the air thick with dust and history. Scout stood by my side, his eyes locked on me, his tail still, as though he too was waiting for me to make the decision. I thought of everything that had led me here: Victor's life, his choices, the legacy he had left for me. Was I ready to carry that burden? I could feel the pulse of the mansion beneath my feet, the weight of its history pressing down on me. I had uncovered the truth, but now the question was whether I should leave it hidden, or whether it was time for the world to know. The thought of opening the secrets to the world was daunting. What would it mean for the town, for the people who lived here? Would they be able to handle the truth? Or would it destroy everything Victor had worked so hard to protect? I knew one thing for certain: the past could never be truly buried. It had a way of resurfacing, of making itself known, no matter how hard we tried to hide it. The chamber wasn't just a room. It was a metaphor for the choices we all must make. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that the decision wasn't just about uncovering the truth. It was about what I would do with that truth once I had it. The power to shape the future lay in my hands. I stood still for a moment, feeling the weight of that power, the responsibility that came with it. The map I had uncovered, the chamber I had unlocked, they were all part of a larger plan, a plan that Victor had set in motion long before I arrived. But what was that plan? And why had he left it for me to finish? I turned back to the chest, the scroll still in my hands, its faint glow lighting the room. I needed answers, and I needed them fast. I began to sift through the books and papers on the table, looking for any clue, any piece of information that would help me understand what Victor had intended. As I scanned the pages, I came across a letter, one that seemed older than the others, its edges frayed and torn. The handwriting was familiar. It was Victor's. The letter read, "To the one who inherits my legacy, know this: the chamber holds more than just knowledge. It holds a power that, once unleashed, cannot be controlled. I've spent my life protecting it, hiding it from the world, because I knew that the truth would destroy those who were not ready for it. But now, I've reached the end of my journey. It is your choice whether to unleash the power, to release the knowledge into the world. But be warned, the consequences will be far-reaching. The world is not ready for the truth. But you, perhaps, are." I folded the letter carefully, my mind racing. What had Victor meant by the power of the chamber? What was it that I was truly dealing with? And most importantly, what would happen if I made the wrong choice? I stood there in the room, holding the letter, the scroll, the weight of it all heavy on my shoulders. There was no going back now. The decision was mine. The mansion had shown me the way, and now it was up to me to decide what to do with it. Whatever I chose, I knew one thing: nothing would ever be the same. I walked out of the chamber, the air in the mansion feeling colder now, as though the house was waiting for me to make my final decision. I glanced at Scout, his eyes watching me, and for the first time, I wasn't sure what the future held. But I knew that whatever happened next, it would change everything. The mansion had chosen me, and now I had to choose what kind of legacy I would leave behind. I stood at the edge of the mansion's grand hall, the weight of Victor's final words pressing heavily on my chest. The decision had never seemed so clear, yet the consequences of my choice loomed over me like a shadow. The truth was within reach, the power of the chamber, the knowledge that had been hidden for so long. All of it was mine to decide. But I was no longer just a man walking through the doors of an old mansion. I was a keeper of secrets, standing at the crossroads between the past and the future. Scout, as always, stayed by my side, his amber eyes steady. As he looked up at me, He had been with me through every trial, every moment of doubt, and now, like me, he was ready to face whatever lay ahead. The mansion had given me a glimpse into its soul, and I knew the journey was far from over. I walked back down the hallway, the familiar creak of the wooden floor beneath my boots a reminder of how much had changed since I first stepped inside. The house was no longer just a place. It was part of me now, intertwined with my fate. Each room, each corner, each shadow held memories and mysteries that begged to be uncovered. But with each discovery, I was becoming more aware of the price that would be paid. The weight of knowledge was not something to be taken lightly. The truth, as Victor had warned me, came with a cost. As I approached the study, I couldn't shake the feeling that the mansion itself was holding its breath, waiting for me to make the final choice. The letter, the scrolls, the maps, they had all pointed to the chamber, and I knew that unlocking its secrets would change everything. But what if I was wrong? What if I was opening a door that should have remained closed? I shook the doubt from my mind. This was my choice, and no matter the consequences, I had to see it through. I entered the study and approached the desk, the familiar clutter of papers and old books strewn across it. The journal was still there, its pages marked with the weight of a lifetime of secrets. I reached for it, feeling the cool leather under my fingertips as I flipped it open. The last entry Victor had written was still fresh in my mind, and I found myself turning to it once again. The past is never truly gone. It waits, it watches, and it will not let go. The words haunted me, and I knew that they weren't just about Victor's past. They were about mine as well. As I read through the rest of the journal, I could see the connections, the hidden clues that had led me here. Each entry seemed like a step on a path that had been carefully laid out, a path that I was meant to follow. The chamber, the mansion, the truth, everything had been part of Victor's plan, and now, it was my turn to finish it. I placed the journal down and looked toward the door leading to the basement. The path was clear now, the chamber was below, and it was time to unlock the final mystery. I took a deep breath and made my way to the stairs, the cool air of the basement swirling up to greet me as I descended. The steps creaked underfoot, and for a moment, I felt like I was walking through the pages of history itself. I reached the bottom and stood before a thick, rusted door that had clearly been untouched for years. The air in the basement was thick with dust and the smell of age. It was a place forgotten by time, but now, it was a place waiting to reveal its truth. I reached for the handle, feeling the cool metal against my palm, and as I turned it, the door groaned open. Beyond it was the chamber. The room was vast, its walls lined with strange carvings, and the center of the room was dominated by a large stone altar. The symbols that adorned the walls were unfamiliar, but they felt strangely familiar at the same time, as if they were calling to me. The chamber was unlike anything I had imagined, its ancient energy almost palpable. As I stepped inside, I felt the weight of history pressing down on me, and for a moment, I wondered if I was truly ready for what I was about to uncover. Scout stayed by my side, his eyes flicking back and forth as he sensed the change in the air. The room seemed to pulse with energy, and as I approached the altar, I saw something that took my breath away. On the stone surface, there was an ancient book, its pages yellowed with age but still legible. The book was open, its words written in a language I didn't understand. I reached for it, feeling the weight of the book in my hands, and as I opened it further, a soft glow began to emanate from the pages. It was as though the book itself was alive, as if it had been waiting for someone to finally open it. The glow grew brighter, and I could feel the power of the chamber intensifying around me. This was it. This was the moment that would define everything. I wasn't just standing in a room. I was standing at the threshold of a new reality. The book, the chamber, the knowledge, it was all mine now. And with that, I made my choice. I had unlocked the secrets of the mansion, but the truth had only just begun to unfold. The chamber was more than just a place of power. It was a gateway to something far larger, something beyond even Victor's understanding. And now, I was the one who had to face it. I stood there, holding the ancient book in my hands, feeling the warmth from its pages seep into my skin. The chamber around me was alive with energy, the carvings on the walls seeming to pulse in time with my heartbeat. The air was thick with the scent of old stone and ancient secrets, and as the soft glow from the book bathed the room, I realized that I was standing at the precipice of something far bigger than I could ever have imagined. Scout stood by my side, his ears alert and his body tense, sensing the change in the air, as if he too knew that something monumental was unfolding. The mansion had kept its secrets for generations, but now, I had unlocked its heart. And with that came a responsibility to understand, to decipher, and to decide what to do with the knowledge I had just uncovered. I flipped open the book, the words in the strange language starting to make sense, shifting in my mind as I read them aloud. The language was unfamiliar, but it felt like the very essence of the mansion was guiding me, helping me understand its meaning. As I read, the room seemed to grow colder, the shadows on the walls deepening as the book's secrets unfolded. The words spoke of an ancient power, one that had been sealed away in the mansion for centuries, protected by the family that had lived here. The power was not just knowledge, it was something more. It was a force that had the ability to shape the world, to change the very fabric of reality. I could feel the weight of it, the gravity of what I was holding in my hands. The book was the key to the mansion's deepest secret, and now that I had it, I had to decide what to do with it. But what? If I wasn't ready? What if the power was too great to control? The chamber around me seemed to close in, the air thick with the weight of those thoughts. I took a step back, closing the book and holding it tightly to my chest. I could feel the energy of the mansion, the power of the secrets it held, surging through me. This wasn't just about discovering the past. This was about shaping the future. But I wasn't alone in this. The mansion, the book, the knowledge, it had all led me here for a reason. And the more I thought about it, the clearer it became. The decision wasn't just about me. It was about everyone who had come before me, everyone who would come after. The town, the people, the legacy of the mansion, all of it was tied together. I glanced at Scout, his amber eyes watching me, and I knew that I had to make my choice. The book, the power, the chamber, they were all part of the same story, and now it was my turn to decide how it would end. I turned back to the book, my fingers brushing over the cover. As I did, I felt a sudden surge of energy, a wave of understanding flooding my mind. The words I had read earlier shifted in my mind, rearranging themselves into something I could understand. The power of the mansion, the secret it held, was not just about knowledge. It was about choice. The chamber was a gateway, not just to the past, but to the future. It was a chance to shape what was to come, to decide how the power would be used. But with that choice came a risk. What if the power was too great to control? What if it was a mistake to unlock it? My thoughts raced, but as I stood there, holding the book, I realized that I couldn't let fear dictate my decision. This was my destiny. I had uncovered the truth, and now it was up to me to decide what to do with it. I opened the book again, the glow from its pages illuminating the room, and as I read, I knew that this was only the beginning. The power of the mansion was mine to wield, but how I chose to use it would determine the fate of everything. My life, the town, the mansion, and all the lives that had been touched by it. It was a heavy burden, but it was a burden I was willing to bear. I stood in the chamber, the book in my hands, and I knew that no matter what happened next, I was ready. The mansion had given me its secrets, and now it was time to decide what kind of future I would create with them. As I closed the book, I could feel the weight of the mansion's history pressing down on me, and for the first time, I felt truly connected to this place. This was my home now, and the choices I made here would echo through the ages. I stood in the chamber, the weight of the book in my hands and the mansion's secrets pressing heavily on my chest. The air around me seemed to hum with energy, and the room felt alive, its ancient stones holding the echoes of generations past. The mansion had revealed its truth, its power, and now it was up to me to decide what to do with it. The knowledge, the legacy, it was all in my hands. I had come so far, uncovered so much, but now the most difficult part was before me, the choice. The book had shown me a path, but it also showed me the dangers that lay ahead. The power that had been hidden for so long could either save the town or destroy it. It could change the course of history, but only if I was willing to carry that burden. I thought about everything I had learned, the mansion's history, the family that had once ruled this place, and the sacrifices made to protect the secret hidden beneath it all. But what did it all mean now? The mansion had chosen me to uncover its truth, but was I ready to wield that power? Scout stood by my side, his eyes watching me closely, as if he too understood the weight of the decision. He had been with me through every moment, every challenge, and now, as I faced the greatest choice of my life, I knew that I couldn't do it alone. I took a deep breath, the cool air filling my lungs, and I made my decision. The truth had been revealed, and now I had to decide what to do with it. The chamber was no longer just a room. It was a symbol of everything I had uncovered, everything I had learned. It was a turning point, and I had to decide what kind of future I wanted to create. I could feel the pull of the mansion, the power of the chamber, and the responsibility that came with it. The knowledge I had gained was more than just information. It was a weapon that could change everything. I turned back to the book, my fingers brushing over its pages one last time. The words seemed to shimmer, as if the book itself was alive, waiting for me to make the final choice. The power, the knowledge, it was all there, but it was up to me how it would be used. I closed the book and stood up, feeling the weight of the decision in every part of my being. The mansion had given me everything, and now it was time for me to give something back. I walked to the center of the chamber, feeling the ground beneath my feet, solid and unyielding. The house had waited for this moment for years, and now I was the one who would decide its future. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath, focusing on the energy around me, feeling it connect with me, the mansion, and everything that had led me here. The path ahead was unclear, but I knew one thing. The future was mine to shape. I had uncovered the truth, but now it was time to use that truth for something greater. As I opened my eyes, I looked around the chamber one last time. The walls, the books, the artifacts, they were all part of the mansion's story, part of my story. And with that, I knew what I had to do. I couldn't keep the knowledge to myself. The power of the mansion, the truth of its past, it had to be shared, but shared wisely. It was a legacy that needed to be carried forward, not hidden away in the shadows. I walked out of the chamber, the heavy book in my hands, feeling a sense of peace wash over me. The decision had been made, and I had chosen the path of redemption, of sharing the truth, and of creating a future where the mansion's power could be used for good. As I made my way back through the halls, I could feel the mansion shifting, as though it was releasing a long-held breath, the weight of its history finally being lifted. Scout followed me, his presence a reminder that I was not alone. We had come here together, and we would face the future together. The mansion was no longer just a place of secrets and shadows. It was now a symbol of hope, of new beginnings. I knew the journey ahead would be difficult, but I was ready. The mansion had given me its truth, and now I would give it to the world. And as I stepped outside, the sun was rising, casting its light on the mansion that had been both my challenge and my salvation. The future was bright, and I was ready to face it.